Hello, everyone. Welcome at the Eindhoven Innovation Café. It's great that we can do this live again. I'm sure everybody's happy with that. Welcome to everybody watching online as well. For those who haven't been here before, the Eindhoven Innovation Café is a network event where we give a platform to speakers in design, technology and science. And today we have Willem Coenen from Atelier Scheldeman, all the way from Antwerp, who's going to talk to us about socio-spatial architectural installations. Take it away.
Thanks. Good evening. So I'm Willem. I'm the founder of Atelier Scheldeman. It's an architecture atelier based in Antwerp. And I will talk about open architectural structures and more specific poetic installations in public space. And I'm doing research towards the interface between action and spatial sculptures. So I'm trained as an architect, but I always liked to touch the tactile aspect of building, and I try to create open architecture, so it's kind of open spaces and trying to design minimal structures to create like a very subtle action to have a social interaction in the open architecture. And to create structures, I always base myself on the reference that's presented on the left side, which comes out of Constructing Architecture. It's a book where they make a comparison between building and building parts and human body. So as you can see on the left side, they define parts as tissues, components as organs, structures as systems, and then superstructures as organisms. And what I found interesting is that the parts or the components, in a building or in a construction, they become structures and superstructures, but they can always go up and down the ladder and keep their own properties as those elements. And it's the way that I try to find a detail to connect them in architecture makes this possible to have this circular method of constructing. And then on the right side, I will talk about how those organisms are a part of the architectural open structures that I work on. I have to point there. Okay. So I selected a few projects that were built in public space. Do I have to point there? Doesn't really. So the first one is buitenkamers, or outside chambers, and it's an in situ installation in urban white space. It's a project we build in Antwerp, and it's kind of white space in the city because it's in between a new development and the deterioration of old housing. So what we did is we created a timber frame construction where we refer to a housing typology, and there's actually two chambers. One is a green chamber at the top, and then at the bottom there's a like kind of living room we created. So the people from the nearby neighborhood were asked to give input on what should it be, this temporary installation, and they said like, okay, we want to have a place for dining, a place for playing, for cooking, to take water, and by creating those outlines, we made it possible to enhance all those functions in a kind of abstract way in the city. So the way we defined the details to construct the whole timber frame were designed in a way that they were super simple and that it was just one detail that is copied 1,000 times in the project, so all people from the neighborhood could help constructing their own new temporary environment. That way. Yeah. So these are some pictures of how it's being used, like with ideas from the neighborhood themselves, like a swing. So that's a picture from the bigger structure where you can see how it's being used as benches and slides. This is a photo of the green chamber. It's really like an open floor plan, actually, with just trees and space to sit or to read. So it's nice that by just creating those simple outlines, the social action becomes the filling of this plan. Oh. Yeah. So this is a last photo of the outside chamber project, where you can see the connection of it's like a steel leg that's on a really simple concrete foundation that forms the base to go up with the timber frame, and by building it with the detail of just butts and not rods and bolts, you can just take it out very easily without damaging the basic construction element. So second project is the rope pavilion. It's an architectural pavilion in Malta. So Malta is actually an island between Europe and Africa, and throughout centuries it's being used as a kind of in-between stop for boats, and by making the design for the competition, we used it as like a reference to start working on how it should look like on the edge of the island when you arrive by boat, or when you approach this rocky cliffs as a spectator. And like not only the like the big image, but also in the details we use all those references to boats and how the aesthetics and the materiality is on like old sail ships, and then we bring it to a contemporary way of building architecture. So this is a photo of the workshop we did. It's like a 2-week workshop with students, which is like stitching 2 or 3 kilometers of rope through a central chain, and they go towards pre-drilled holes in masts standing on a hexagon platform. And it's like a really important image to also show like the reference to how life is on those ships and how everybody has to work together to construct pavilions as how you work together on a boat. And then the aesthetics of like sails, they are shown when you enter the pavilion. The Blikfabrik is a recent project we did as a multi-purpose meeting space in an old factory next to Antwerp. So the factory stopped with producing tin cans, and so it's a big infrastructure that ran empty, and project developers and collectives started to think about what to do with a huge space. So they all kind of collaborated to fill in and to make their ateliers, to make bars, and to make cooperative spaces. And then in this area, it's a kind of central zone where everybody that's a member or that's a visitor of the big empty space, they come all together, and they asked us to design some kind of intervention to host or to give a kind of asset to have events or to have talks, to screen videos, to have like little markets, stuff like this. So we did like a big hall that's really flexible, and we were looking like where to put this building, how to do it in the area. So we thought it's interesting that it's really flexible and that it can maybe move around through this factory, and then by moving it around, it also creates other relationships with the empty factory, and it can also have other functions throughout the lifetime of the project. So by thinking towards a way to create a minimal kind of architectural skin to enhance the social activity where we were looking for, we found like those building principles from greenhouse structures, which are all joints and tubes that are designed for farmers that also change the crops during the season. So it's a really circular method that also the building pieces, they kind of travel around. So it's both as a construction element and as a conceptual element was interesting to use to work with. And then this is like the final image of the sculpture where you can see two really light frame structures with a kind of diffuse skin. And then it has one closed facade in the back, one open facade in the front, and then there's just one door on the side, and that's kind of it to make it like a really. This doesn't work really well. Oh. So yeah, that's how it looks when it's being used, and because of this light frame structure, we were also able to put it on wheels. So the initial idea to have it like flexible, moving around in the area, like got real in a way by adding those wheels. And during the opening, even children were able to play and to drive around with these two pavilions, which is kind of nice to see that it also happens when you suggest something like this. Time-wise? Okay, you're doing it. Yeah. So, Bounce Interfere is another project. It's a spatial acoustical installation in collaboration with Maaike Garnica, like a fine arts artist. So we build like a very simple architectural gesture in a large space, and basically it's an elliptic form. Maybe you can show the next one. So the ellipse stands central in the space, and we chose this typology because Maaike works with sound and ceramic objects. So we were looking for an architectural form that creates an acoustical experience when you visit the pavilion. And in the ellipse, there is some kind of phenomenon that you have two focal points where sound arrives, and where you have this weird phenomenon of like interfering sound waves. Like everybody knows the stages from the Romans, where you have, when you clap in your hands, you hear all the sounds super loud. And the same principle we wanted to do or to achieve by constructing this space. So when you enter, you have like this primary sound that you just hear when I talk to you, but then there is the surrounding that is super reflective, and you hear the sound like twice or even multiplied by hundreds. So it creates a really funny movement of people that want to look for this specific focal point spot where they also start to communicate with each other, to give on this feeling. So then by developing the way of constructing, we looked for a materiality that has like a really reflecting hard acoustical performance, but in the same way like really simple, thin, and also aesthetically strong image. So we ended up with a pink plasterboard, and by making a nice wooden leg for each of them, we were able to just put them all next to each other, stitching textile on the top, and then by doing this it becomes like a stiff structure, where we didn't build just two plates to make sure you can enter the space, and people also move around this pavilion to look for this entrance. And so Caban is it's a timber frame house that was built for time-out projects in rural areas in Flanders. So it's a project where people go when they want to have a time out in their life, and they can do agri-forestry or permaculture, and they needed some kind of host or baker mat to have lunch or to have a cup of coffee, and so it's kind of in the middle of a rural foresty area, and also the program is really sensitive, kind of. So we also wanted to do a kind of sensitive project with not like harming or the environment too much, and give like a kind of modest gesture in the area. So we created a really simple timber frame house, which again has like almost no floor plan, just there is one working board with a sink and a table, a stove, and the rest is like the social action that makes the floor plan, kind of. Yeah. And there is this really simple facades, which are saying like, okay, it's a really simple housing typology or timber frame typology, with or just a door or just a window or just a closed facade, and then this simple wooden volume is put it on ground screws. So it's the little legs you see at the bottom, they're like 1.50 meters screws, and you drill them into the earth, and it forms the basis to put this to put structures on. So also when you would remove the structure, you can just take out all the parts. You take out the screws, and it's just the green area again. Yeah, this is a model, and yeah, well, while we were designing the cabane, we also found some trees on the site that had to go because they were too old, and then we had to chop them down, and then we brought them to a sawmill to cut them into planks, let them dry, and really to use them, the wood from the site, as constructing parts. Yeah, and so this is how it looks. Yeah. So the trees from the area were used to make the facade cladding and the floors. Okay. So this is a last project I wanted to talk about. It's a three-dimensional framework that's an asset to do research on how to build with this open structure system, and also to do research on locally available materials. And we kind of give the framework to students or participants that want to do this workshop, and it starts with this system. So it's two circles in steel that slide into each other, and they are the joints you see, and form the starting point to make wooden ribs. And I think we as designers just give those elements as a starting point to work with students and to do research on materiality that can be used, and the nice thing is that those steel parts, they come out of cutting edges they have in the laser industry. So all the sides that they cannot use in their production, they can implement the drawings of these steel circles. So we kind of get them as building parts slowly when their production is moving. And the ribs, they come from trees that has to be chopped down because they're standing in the way on construction sites. And yeah, we also chop them into smaller beams to make already the structural basis. And the idea is that we build structures, and that it also kind of grows in time, and that we find new materials like textile to close surfaces, or I don't know, more steel parts to make floorings, and so on. Yeah, I think that's kind of the last slide. and that's a bit the open end to have a discussion on, or if you have questions to on other projects I talked about, or maybe you have like ideas how to continue this this process.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Because all your projects are quite like social interactive, but how do you start this? Like, is this a fascination, like something you see happening or interests you, or do you work from a question that's already there?
I think it started kind of intuitively by building. It's definitely in architecture. It's always like a big process with a lot of people involved, and on the architectural side, it's more sending emails and phone calls. But on the construction site itself, it's really fascinating how everything and everybody comes together and like has to work together, has to fit their planning and their details together. And I think from this fascination, I started to work kind of in between the two professions somehow. And also, as when you wear the architect hat, you see that a lot of things go wrong because architects, maybe they're not always there on the site, so things go wrong and they maybe don't know a lot of the materials they suggest. And so yeah, by being on the construction site and finding a way how to combine those two, it kind of evolved towards social interactive work. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you first if you could sort of repeat the question, because then it doesn't, you can hear it through the microphone for the live stream. Sorry, I forgot to ask it earlier. And I was wondering, like, because it's not common for architects to also like help with the building, right? It's just the designer basically. Why is that?
Yeah, because according to the law, you cannot be an architect and a contractor at the same time. And this law comes from, I think, an old law in 1939, where they say you cannot do those two, because as an architect you have the role to control everybody that builds, and if you're the builder yourself, then you have to control yourself, and then you're schizophrenic. And for now, I don't see much trouble in this scale. I only see opportunities. But I can imagine when the scale grows bigger, like apartment buildings, and then the designer is also the contractor, maybe it's like grows a bit corrupt. But I'm still looking for an answer to that also, because in a way it happens every day. I think that the architects already know with who they will build it, and then there is an open competition to hand in like prizes, but they already know, and so I don't have a clear answer actually. Just that it's a law formed by the order of architects to protect the profession of architects. Yeah, I think there's always a context for a project, and like beginning in school, they also give you like the context, and then you have to find the answers to a certain context, and so then I got interested in the public space and started to look what's going on there in architectural opportunities and making architectural pavilions in public space. And also it's okay, that's what comes out if you're always if you focus on this public space and working on this open architecture, then these are like five or six projects that work with the same method, and I think the last one is more like a self-initiated project where I want to go deeper in like this seeking for okay, what is it? Is the open architecture and an open structure. So I think the answer to your question is that it's all like it's open architecture. I don't know if you saw the beginning or. So I presented 5 projects that are dealing with what it is to make open sculptural architecture and poetic installations in public space, and I think that's what binds the 5 projects I selected. But I don't know if that's clear to you. Yeah, the inspiration comes also from those open structures that you have in marketplaces or swimming pools or big halls where there's not really a defined floor plan. Like there is the kitchen and there is the table and there's the bathroom, but it's an open plan where the social action makes the stuff going. Yeah.
I think if I look at the 5 projects, I see a lot of similarities to like camping. This idea of like having a modular kit, but then you're kind of struggling to set up these temporary spaces. And I was wondering, what does this philosophy, this kind of open architecture, creating skins in public space, what does it look like when you go from working together with a small-ish group, creating temporary structures? What does it look like when you're creating larger structures that are not temporary? Like, how does the kind of open architecture, this poetic angle, translate to non-temporary structures?
Yeah, I find it fascinating that if you focus on making a good structure that can survive many users, let's say an apartment building, for example, where you find the right dimension to host different floor plans, to host different people that want to live there. So they don't have to tear down the whole apartment building, but it can just slowly grows with the time and with like climates that are among people.
of like how factory spaces are being converted into apartments, or
Sorry?
kind of like how factory spaces are now being turned into apartments. Is that what you mean? This kind of like adaptation of the skin to serve whatever function is necessary?
Yeah, but I don't think that it always like that the open structure has the name yet to be a factory or to be an apartment, but maybe it can be just like a structure that's an apartment for a while, and then you take out some ribs or some crucial elements, and then there's then you have a bigger space that can be a sports center. And
I think to me, at least when I think about architecture, I think that somehow form implies function to a large extent. Like you mentioned the Colosseum, it's the shape it has is for a reason. It's because you're supposed to perform in the Colosseum. You wouldn't want to live in the Colosseum.
No.
And I'm wondering if you're maybe overgeneralizing and saying like, oh, all spaces, or like this space needs to be anything it can be, without saying like, oh, you know, if you're making housing, then it's maybe nice to have multiple smaller plots that have some separation, or if you're creating a factory, that it's good to have a very large open plan flexible space. So what are you losing when you overgeneralize the space?
Yeah, a good question. I think you can also make mistakes, and then you build also huge things, but then they have to go away anyway because they cannot host a new function they want to enhance. Yeah, I don't have a clear answer yet, but I think it's nice to do it and to see what comes out. So I believe more in trying this than like to make all those objects that are, or this architecture that's specifically for this one family, for one lifespan. And a lot of times, especially in Belgium, it becomes really like this hybrid monster of all kind of materials and choices and colors that are stuck together, and there is no one that can do something with it after they move out, and then they have to do everything over again, and that's just a really sad situation also.
So it's a bit of a reaction to over-specialization of architecture.
Yeah, I think so.
So I think we should probably round things off for now, for at least for here. Thank you for your presentation. It's very interesting. I suggest we carry on the conversation at the bar. Because of COVID regulations, we do have to be seated, so there is a large table at the front of the restaurant where we can sit. So yeah, enjoy.
Yeah, thanks everybody. En altijd naar daar.
Ja. Rondjes? Ja, leuk.
Dat is altijd zo zot als je zo lang aan één stuk moet praten en mensen zitten er zo aan te staren.
Ja, maar dat zo bij die borrel, dat is wat informeler, dus ik zou gewoon zo...
Welk?
Bij de borrel.
Ja, voilà, dat is...
Drink je gerust een biertje of zo.
Ja, dat ga ik doen. Deze dingetje.
Jij hebt dit de enige klikkenrest die hier is?
Ja.
Nee, we hebben nog niet. Ik heb nog 5 gedaan.